Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Duke It Out Wrestling Podcast, where I, Duke, talk about the events from the past, present, or future in the world of professional wrestling. Now, I've kind of realized that with the podcast, I should basically be calling this the pay-per-view prediction podcast because a lot of the episodes of this podcast have been predicting pay-per-views, but it's probably more so on me because of my timing, but we've got another pay-per-view coming up, so we definitely have got to talk about it, and not we need to talk about style, because I will be posting and we need to talk about CM Punk, which that should be out the day after this podcast comes up. So hopefully you'll be able to see that video on Friday. But for AEW Revolution, I'm excited for this show, but before I really dig into the card, I want to talk about one discussion I have noticed from some AEW fans, and that it seems that a lot of people have been sizzling out from AEW television. Like, a lot of people have been discussing the fact that Dynamite may not be as intriguing as it used to be a few months ago, and that a lot of the storylines are sort of fading out, or if they are getting good, sometimes it can either last too long or some weird thing can start to develop. And I can understand it, especially because if you compare to the 2021 AEW, where there were so many incredible signings, like, and CM Punk returning, like, there was so much up in the air, and now that we've had the brawl out, and there's a lot more recovery from that. Cody's left, and there's been a couple bumps in the road, and that I think it could start to bring that development from some fans that if something immediately isn't the way that they liked it the first time, then it's just going to start getting worse. I can agree that the past few episodes of Dynamite may not have been as intriguing as some over the past year, but I've still been very invested with most of the storylines, and I think as time has gone on, especially over the past couple of weeks, I've gotten much more excited for Revolution. So I think this pay-per-view has a lot of pressure for AEW, in all honesty, because I think they really need to knock it out of the park for this one to really shut up those fans that were starting to question if AEW is going to start being not as good as it used to be. Because with all the 8 matches on the card, it has the potential to be one of the best shows of the year. But with there being a 60-minute Iron Man match on the card, hopefully this pay-per-view isn't 5 hours long, but it probably will be. But at the very least, like with most AEW pay-per-views, yeah, they're long, but almost every match on the card looks enticing. So the first, I will dig into the non-title matches that will be happening on the show, and there are 2 out of the 8 matches on this card that aren't for any titles. And the first one I'll talk about, actually, wait, I'm wrong. There are 3. My bad. The first one I'll talk about is Chris Jericho versus Ricky Starks. Now, I think they've been doing a very good job building up this feud, especially to keep Ricky Starks very over. And I think that's been the main beneficial factor for this feud, and since it has been, they've really been knocking that out of the park. Because Ricky Starks has been further developing himself as a babyface. His feud with Hobbs was a bit iffy. They had the short match it all out, but then their lights out match was really, really good. So that was good, but there needed to be a little bit more. And then they mixed Ricky Starks in right after the Action Andretti upset. And I thought that was a very good mix-up. Or not mix-up, but just a very good team-up for them to start developing over those next few weeks. And they did some decent build-up with the gauntlet of having Daniel Garcia still beat him before Sammy could even come out. And with this storyline, I feel like it's good, but it could be a lot better. And when it comes to the match, I'm not too sure on how this chemistry is going to click. And especially when I compare it to Jericho's Revolution match last year with Eddie Kingston, that was absolutely phenomenal. That is a lot to compare it to, so that just might be me being way too freaking harsh on it. But I do think it should be a decent match. I think it would be a good contender to open the show because both Ricky Starks and Chris Jericho are very crowd interactive. They can get them very excited and very loud for the first maybe 10 to 15 minutes of the show. Because I can't imagine this match being a 20-minute Mac Classic or anything. But I think Jericho is going to end up losing, especially with the fact that with the stipulation they had Jericho Appreciation Society barred from ringside. And while I think there is the possibility that he could get the sneak-in win, I think since this feud was mainly started to develop Ricky Starks even more, I feel like it would be more so unnecessary to have Ricky Starks lose this match. So I'm gonna go with Ricky Starks. I'm not extremely confident in that decision, but at the very least, I'm more so in the column of I think it should happen, that Ricky Starks should win. He should beat Chris Jericho. If Jericho goes over, I won't be that upset, but I would be a little bit confused. And then the second of the non-title matches, we have got the continuation of a feud we've been wanting to see for so long, because we got the unfortunate injury of Christian Cage before their match at All Out, which led to the Luchasaurus heel turn. But we are finally getting Jungle Boy Jack Perry versus Christian Cage in a no-holds-barred match. And they immediately did a very, very good job to get fans immediately back into extreme excitement for this feud, because it had been months and they were starting some stuff with Jungle Hook, and I was even questioning if they were just going to bring Jungle Boy back in the tag division without even thinking too much about that awesome feud he'd been having with Christian, but they immediately brought it back at just the right time. Christian attacking Jungle Boy in the stage was incredible, and him trolling the arm sling. It was all brilliant work. Jungle Boy is one of the best baby faces in wrestling right now. Christian Cage is further proving himself to be one of the greatest heels in all of wrestling. So I have a lot of excitement for this match. I don't exactly know how it's going to go down, because we've already had a Christian Cage versus Jack Perry match on pay-per-view where it turned out to be not what we wanted. So there is part of me that's trying to not hold out a ton of hope for this to be as good as I would want it to be. But I'm sure it's going to be an amazing spot fest. And Jungle Boy, he has to get this win, in all honesty. I mean, I could see Christian winning it. I could see Christian getting the win on Jungle Boy more than I could see Jericho getting the win on Ricky Starks. But with two babyface wins in a row. Fuck. I am probably still going to go with Jack Perry. Very slightly. Maybe as time goes on, by the time I'm watching the pay-per-view, I'll be more so confident that Christian is going to win the match. But it's all good for now. I'll stick with Jungle Boy. And the last for the non-title matches is one of my most anticipated matches for this entire show, if not my most anticipated match for this entire show overall, which is Jon Moxley versus Hangman Page in a Texas death match. Moxley and Hangman's feud has been probably my favorite thing on AEW television over the past few months. In December of 2022, when they were really starting to build it up, when Hangman came back after Moxley had given him a concussion in October, their brawling was incredible. It felt super genuine. Moxley bringing in that heel heat, knocking his head like this. It was incredible television. And then cutting to them continuing to fight each other backstage. It gave me Attitude Era vibes. And that's more so because I was born just around the time the Attitude Era began, but still, it just felt like the kind of chaos in wrestling that we haven't seen in a while. And it felt genuine, especially because they had that real life heat with it, with Moxley legitimately hurting Hangman. But I've been very, very locked into everything they've been doing for this feud. Their first two matches have been two of the best television matches all year. And Hangman, I think, won with the roll-up for their first match, and then Moxley got the win with the Paradigm Shift, their second one. So they've been doing a great job to keep it built up. They got them even 1-1, so I am very excited to see how this is going to turn out. I could honestly predict what type of spots that could happen, but it's honestly just so many are flashing through my head right now. It's kind of hard to comprehend. But, and also in all honesty, it doesn't really matter. And I might like to just keep some of that shock in my head. Maybe I shouldn't be overthinking too much, just because I would want to just be locked in and enjoy the whole ride for this match. But we know it's going to be very bloody. It's a death match, and Moxley loves to bleed. We all know this. That, and also, by the way, that promo that he cut that I think was meant to be, that was cut right after, Moxley's match on Rampage. That was phenomenal. And then Hangman's backstage promo as well, saying that he's going to end Moxley. Awesome way to just build up the match for the pay-per-view without having any of them walk out to the ring or anything like that. But this match, I was definitely struggling on who I think is actually going to overall win this match. But I think it's going to be Jon Moxley. And I think it's more so especially going to be Moxley because they've especially been letting Moxley play the heel a bit more in this match. Or not in this match, in this feud. But I think they could really capitalize on a Jon Moxley heel turn. And maybe not just a Jon Moxley heel turn, but a heel turn of the entire Blackpool Combat Club. Maybe not Bryan Danielson since he's got the big babyface world title main event later in the night. But fans have been starting to boo Wheeler Yuta, and Claudio we know can do a great job as a heel. I think it would be really cool. Or if they could just have Jon Moxley and Wheeler Yuta turn heel and have them just be more so of a heel team, which would be really cool and also have some great storytelling with their phenomenal match last year. And then they could have Bryan Danielson and Claudio Castagnoli be more of the babyface side of Blackpool Combat Club, and they could have an implosion and maybe a tag match with those four. I mean, can't say it wouldn't be a phenomenal match, right? And the more time has continued on, Hangman has definitely been more so represented as the babyface and Moxley as the heel. With Hangman's promo talking about how he couldn't remember the name of his son when he was in the hospital, or in the ambulance after his match with Moxley, that was one of the most heartbreaking promos I've seen in a long time. And it definitely launched a lot more excitement for the feud for me. And it definitely, I think, is more further representation to show that Hangman Page is the babyface of this feud. So letting Jon Moxley go full heel to beat Hangman Page, I think would be a really, really cool idea. I don't know if they're necessarily going to pull the trigger on that, but I think regardless, Jon Moxley is going to get the win, and it may not necessarily be in the cleanest of manners, even if it's a Texas death match. You know what I mean. But then I'm going to get to the first title match of the show, which is going to be for the AEW World Tag Team Championships, which is Gun Club defending against the Acclaimed, and the recent winners of the Tag Team Battle Royal just a couple hours ago on Dynamite, Orange Cassidy and Danhausen. And now, for some reason, I completely forgot who, and I lost the card. Mother trucker. You can tell I work on podcasts by myself throughout the entirety of this recording. But it is Gun Club defending against the Acclaimed, Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett, and Orange Cassidy and Danhausen. Now, this is very interesting because with a lot of other popular tag teams in AEW, like I almost said the Revival. Oh no, FTR and the Young Bucks. It's really cool to see a lot of a couple other tag teams that aren't as represented as much on pay-per-view get a big spotlight title match like this. And that is including the Guns, the current champs, because they haven't even had a single title match on pay-per-view in their AEW career so far. And their first one, they're walking in as champions. That is pretty fucking cool heel heat, not gonna lie. And I think all of these different teams could combine into some very fun and energetic spots. Orange Cassidy and Danhausen are way better as a tag team than they should be. I haven't been that active on watching episodes of AEW Dark or Dark Elevation, but I did see a clip from a tag match that Cassidy and Danhausen had on Dark where Danhausen kept Orange Cassidy held up on I forget who I forget his name, JT Gunn or something like that. I'm so sorry, but Danhausen made sure to keep Orange Cassidy up so he could hit the Stun Dog Millionaire. Danhausen hit the German suplex and then the Orange Punch. It was honestly great. Oh, and then And then of course, and then Danhausen did his version of the go to sleep, and then Orange Cassidy and Danhausen did a double choke slam. It was one of the most chaotic tag team spots I'd seen in a minute, but it was a ton of fun, but makes so much sense for the Orange Cassidy and Danhausen characters. And I think especially their interactions with Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal could be a ton of fun. And to continue the feud with the Acclaimed and Gun Club would be very entertaining. I don't know, since this is a fatal four-way, if they're going to have the moment of Billy Gunn turning on the Acclaimed here. I think it is possible, or at the very least, Billy Gunn could do something that he wasn't intending to cost the Acclaim the match, but it would end up costing the Acclaim the match. And I think that would be a really cool moment too. And I'll be honest with you, until this most recent tag team battle royal, I was pretty confident that the Gun Club were going to retain. But I could honestly see Orange Cassidy and Danhausen taking it as a very fun upset. But that is very, that's it's not very unlikely, but I think that's just more so me going with my heart and not my head. So I'm going to stick with the Gun Club retaining the tag team titles, because I think it will continue some great heel heat for them. And if FTR don't end up leaving AEW to go back to WWE or to any other promotion, I think FTR being the people to dethrone Gun Club would be the right decision. And next we have the triple threat match for the AEW Women's World Championship. Jamie Hayter defending her title against Saraya and Ruby Soho. Now, when I was talking about a topic that a lot of people have been talking negatively with AEW, Saraya's definitely another category for that topic. I've seen a lot of hate for Saraya on social media, and it kind of came out of nowhere. And there's the part of me that can understand that, yes, she may not be as good in the ring as she used to be 5 to 6 years ago, which makes sense after having a hiatus in a career like that. But it seems like a lot of it is just like more so because of the fact they just didn't like Saraya to begin with. And I can agree that her spray painting Tony Storm's ass was really weird. Didn't make that much sense. And there have been some weird booking decisions on the team of Tony Storm and Saraya that have been very, very off. But I'm still very entertained with what Saraya's been doing, and her as a heel is definitely a better outcome for AEW, I think. Because regardless of the dumb moments that they had with the spray paint, I am very interested in the reasoning that Saraya and Tony Storm teamed up, that they were originals from WWE, and now they're wanting to come here and destroy any of the AEW originals. It's kind of a basic storyline, but also it's one that easily works, and they've been doing a really, really good job at it. And Ruby Soho being the third member of the match is also a really good add to the story, because yeah, she was from WWE, but she wasn't as big of a name from WWE as Saraya, or even Tony Storm for that matter. So, and with her trying to start an alliance maybe with Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter, it can bring a lot more intrigue into the match too. And I think especially with the fact that Saraya still has to be careful with how much she can take in the ring with her serious neck injury from the past, I think it was a very good decision to have this be a triple threat, because it can give Saraya the time to really focus and make sure that she won't get too hurt. And it can bring in some great chemistry with Ruby Soho and Jamie Hayter, because Jamie Hayter has been further proving herself to be one of the best women's wrestlers in the world right now. Her having the AEW Women's World Championship is by far the best decision that company can have for that division right now. And I think the back and forth chemistry, especially with Soho, is going to be very interesting, especially if Britt Baker comes out to try and interfere or try to beat up Tony Storm if she tries to make an interference. And I'm more so excited for the story building into this match than I am for the match itself. And I honestly am not mad about that, because because more investment into the women's storylines for week after week is a much better value than just enjoying one women's match on one night. But and because a lot of people have been negatively talking with AEW's women's division, especially compared to WWE's women's division, especially more so with name value. And I think the more as time has gone on, they've been really getting better with the division. I think there are still plenty of other developments they have to do, especially more so with the booking, more so than with the talent they have, because now they've got Athena and like I mentioned with Toni Storm and Saraya and I don't know why I was blanking, but Ty Mellows is a great women's wrestler. Nyla Rose is an incredible wrestler. So they've been further developing the women's division very well, and I think having this kind of like team WWE versus team AEW thing, while they have been doing that with Jericho Appreciation Society, it can develop pretty well for this division. I think maybe an eventual blood and guts match with Toni Storm, Saraya, and maybe they can eventually have Ruby Soho turn heel, or maybe bring in Athena for their team to go up against Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter and a few other AEW originals. You could even bring in Riho as well as Nyla Rose, Ty Mello, or Thunder Rosa even. But yeah, I think that could leave some great storylines up in the air for the women's division. But for overall who's going to win the match, I do think it is going to be Jamie Hayter, and she's going to be the one winning the match. And I think she's going to more than likely pin Ruby Soho than she would on Saraya. And I think Saraya might just get distracted by something that Britt Baker does. Maybe she'll chase Britt Baker to the back so it can leave one-on-one with Jamie Hayter and Ruby Soho. And I hope this match turns out to be really good, because I am really wanting to see some more spots from Saraya. And while I know they've been having to make sure they keep it on a very, very well time, but at the same time, it's wrestling. It's dangerous regardless. Sometimes we just have to bite the bullet, I guess, and see what the hell happens. But hopefully that triple threat does turn out really good. And I do definitely think that Jamie Hayter is going to retain. If there was a chance of Jamie Hayter losing the women's title, I think it would be more than likely that Saraya would take it than Ruby Soho, at least at this moment. And next, for the TNT Championship, we've got Samoa Joe versus Wardlow. Now, their feud has been building up pretty fucking well, to be honest. Ward Joe was a very dumb tag team name, but they had some entertaining moments in the ring, and we all kind of knew that it was going to build up to Joe turning on Wardlow and them fighting for the TNT title, so we were all okay with it. And it gave Wardlow time to take a hiatus for a bit, and then after Samoa Joe lost the title to Darby Allin and then won it back from Darby Allin, we then got the return. And I thought that it was a cool moment, but I'll be honest with you, when Wardlow came out with his short hair, it just gave me vibes of either 2005 Batista or Mason Ryan from Nexus in 2011. But I just thought that was pretty funny. But I think the match is going to be very, very fun. Wardlow has continued to show how good he is in the ring, especially for a big man. And Joe really knows how to keep a match so captivating and legit intense. And while I wasn't the biggest fan of their first match, I thought it was a really good match, but nothing extremely out of the box. I think they have the potential to really bring some different kind of spots in here. And as for who's going to win, it is difficult to think through, because Samoa Joe is one of the greatest of all time. He has always been hailed as one of the most dominant forces in the history of pro wrestling. But Wardlow's been getting the Goldberg treatment this past year, and he is a newer and fresher star, so they need to make sure to keep him over. But I think, at least for this match, Samoa Joe is going to get the win. And I think it's especially because if he had won the title, lost it, and then had just won it back, I think they're going to want to keep it onto him for just a couple more months. And I honestly think that is the best decision overall. I don't think it would harm Wardlow too much in the slightest, and I think it would actually be more beneficial for him to get the crowd even further behind him, even though they already adore him. And next we have, for the AEW World Trios Championships, the Elite versus House of Black. Now, Spotfest City, what the fuck else can I say? Kenny Omega, Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson, Malachi Black, Buddy Matthews, Brody King. We know we are going to get some absolutely crazy super kicks, insane knee strikes, and some dominant Spotfest bullshit that is going to be some of the most glorious pro wrestling of the year. This could easily be the match of the night, and it probably is going to end up being match of the night, isn't it? I honestly am very, very excited for this match because I remember back when Buddy Matthews / Buddy Murphy was wrestling in 205 Live and kept hitting those insane knee strikes on Cedric Alexander. I kept thinking to myself, I would love to see a battle of him versus Kenny Omega's V-Trigger. And now we finally get it. I'm more so excited for the interactions with Kenny Omega and Buddy Matthews, maybe more so than I am for the entire match itself. But I am really excited to see what's going to really develop from here, what kind of spots we're going to get, and what kind of cheating tactics we could get from the House of Black as well. Or if we could potentially even get a new member for the House of Black. I think that would be really cool, but I'm drawing a blank as to who it could actually be. And for who I would think would win that match, I would have to go with House of Black. I think there is a definite chance of the Elite retaining those titles, but I definitely think the House of Black need that win more than the Elite do. And especially when we were having that fear earlier last year of Malachi Black leaving AEW and never coming back, I think them getting the trios titles could then be a bigger promise for them in the future of the company. So I think overall, House of Black becoming the new trios championships would be the biggest beneficial factor for that match at Revolution. And now I'm sorry. It is also 1:22 in the morning here, and I'm extremely exhausted, but wanted to try and make sure this podcast got out tomorrow. But we have the main event for the AEW World Championship, a 60-minute Iron Man match. Maxwell Jacob Friedman versus the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson. And I'm really excited for this match. I think I'm more so scared of the quality just because 60-minute Iron Man matches are matches with a lot of pressure. I know the Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels Iron Man match has been hailed by many as one of the greatest matches of all time, but I've watched that match 2 or 3 times, and I can hardly remember anything besides the 2-minute overtime. And it's nothing really against them because they're 2 of the greatest wrestlers of all time. But it just seemed to really drag, and it might just be the point that they didn't let him have a single fall for the entire match, which I have a feeling in this one it's not going to be 0-0 for the whole 60 minutes, especially since they've been building up Bryan's shoulder being injured and MJF trying to further attack it or let other people attack it with the matches he's had with either Bandito or Konosuke Takeshita. Obviously with the matches to build up to that, we've seen that kind of MJF booking before, but the recent promos from MJF has continued to shine such an amazing light on this feud. MJF continuing to show his dastardly heel ways and even bringing in reality into it when he was talking about his engagement and how his apparently now ex-fiance had left him. And I thought that might have just been for the context of the story, but it seems to be that MJF and his previous fiance did break off their engagement. So it just really just let me sink back into my seat, which MJF is a master of doing. Even though sometimes his promos could start to become a bit of the same, he still finds different type of presentation, wording, and topic to keep our minds blown. But yeah, when he was talking about his resentment for Bryan Danielson for continuing to wrestle, even though it could destroy his family life, his marriage with Brie Bella and his kids. I thought that was an incredible way to make this feud instantaneously personal, and that promo alone has got me 10 times more excited for this match. And I think MJF's going to do some terrific heel work with Bryan's arm. There's going to be some great crowd work throughout. I am very curious on what they're really going to do to stretch out that 60 minutes. And also if they're going to go into overtime or not. Please God, I really hope they don't, because I know all the other matches combined before the Iron Man match will be 3.5 hours. But I'm still very excited for this match. I was going back and forth for a bit on if I think Bryan Danielson is going to get the AEW World title or if he's never going to get it and MJF is going to keep holding on to the gold. And I definitely think I am going to stick with the latter, especially since this is MJF's first defense on pay-per-view. I think second defense overall since he had that match with Ricky Starks at Winter is Coming. But I think MJF getting the win is just honestly the best way to work things out. And I think they wouldn't have built up Bryan Danielson to continuously having to wrestle such incredible matches with such incredible opponents while having a shoulder or arm get further and further injured. I don't think they would have built up to anything like that as long as they could use that as the excuse for Bryan Danielson to lose to MJF in a 60-minute Iron Man match. But I am very excited for how this match is going to go. Maybe I think I could be a little bit more excited than I actually am, but I really hope this match ends up blowing my fucking mind by the end of it. But those are my AEW Revolution 2023 predictions and this episode of the Duke It Out Wrestling Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening, and please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, and duke out your opinions below in the comments.